An American arrested in the Philippines ended up dead less than 24 hours later, and now his family wants answers. Here's the story. Jesse Finney, a 42-year-old documentary filmmaker, traveled the world. Originally from Boston, he worked on shows for National Geographic and the History Channel. He also worked making inexpensive and sustainable housing for the poor. That's the project he was working on in the Philippines when, on December 4th, he was arrested on child trafficking charges. His family says those charges are just plain false. Less than 12 hours later, Filipino law enforcement say Jesse committed suicide in his prison cell, claiming he was found hanging by his own belt. Jesse's family doesn't buy that explanation and say they aren't getting the help they need from the U.S. government to find the truth. Jesse's sister, Molly Finney Basquet, joins us now. Ma'am, nice to see you. Our condolences in the death of your brother. What have you tried to get answered and what hasn't been answered so far?
Well, the primary question is what really happened in that detention center after he was brought in for questioning that Monday night a few weeks ago. Everything hinges on that question. We know, because we know our brother and other facts that have come out after the event, that he would never have taken his own life. So we believe that he was murdered, and we want to know who's responsible and how it happened.
Conceivably, the people who would help push this forward would be Filipino law enforcement. Understandable that they deal with slightly different standards than we do. U.S. State Department would be the next place to turn. Have they been helpful, the embassy in Manila?
They've been very kind, but, you know, they're diplomats, and so they have to be diplomatic. They've told us that their hands are really tied, that they don't have any jurisdiction with Philippine law enforcement. And so what it will really require to get justice for Jesse and find out what really happens is more public pressure to have an internal investigation and public media pressure that will allow the State Department to, if possible, interfere a little more and help us find out what really happened in there.
And I know it has been a struggle, to say the very least, to bring your brother's body back home. I know you're going to have a independent autopsy done. This brings up serious questions, though. I mean, he was arrested for some reason. You say it was trumped up. Give us a sense of what the Philippine law enforcement say is their reasoning and their evidence, and why you don't believe it.
Well, we have the final report, and even in the final report from the NBI, which is the Filipino equivalent of the FBI, there's no actual evidence that he was engaged in human trafficking, in child abuse, or anything like that. It's true that for about a year now, he's been living there. He moved away from his camera and film work and was moving toward learning how to build sustainable off-grid housing for poor folks. And Jesse loved people from all walks of life, and especially befriended people who were really vulnerable. And he'd befriended this community of kids and parents where he lived, and was helping them out financially, taking them to school sometimes. And I think the optics on that were really bad. Human trafficking is a problem in the Philippines. We think he was fingered by someone he was formerly helping because he looked like he maybe was doing something that he wasn't. They attributed poor motives to him, brought him in for questioning, and thought that he was a bad guy, filled in the blanks themselves, and someone took matters into their own hands. That's what we believe happened.
Any evidence beyond the facts that you have laid out here? There's a circumstantial case you make for him not taking his own life, and I understand how difficult of a question this is, but is there any hard facts that say that point to the scenario you put forth other than the circumstantial evidence?
Well, I think the most credible evidence we have is the kids themselves. The kids he was helping have been in constant contact with us since his death. They're devastated by his death. They found us based on my maiden name and my sister's maiden name. They gave us written and video testimony that Jesse was only helping them. He wanted them to stay in school. They were weeping in their video testimony. They wanted to clear his name. And we're close on the heels of our independent autopsy done here in Boston. The initial finding of the forensic pathologist said his death is not 100% consistent with suicide.
All right, last question for you. Has the State Department or anybody shown a willingness to put some pressure on the Philippine government to demand answers from their own people? The Philippine detention centers are not exactly bastions of justice, shall we say, or due process.
No.
Has there been any attempt by the State Department to put some pressure on the Philippine government to get answers?
Not so far. There's been empathy, but as I said, I think they're really waiting for more external public pressure to allow them to justify putting in turn pressure on the NBI and the Filipino government. So that's what we're hoping for, and we're so grateful to be able to tell his story for you here today.
Well, without passing judgment on the case, would say that you're a dedicated and loving sister, and that says a lot about you and about your love for your brother, that you're here talking about him. It's not easy to do. We'll follow this case. We've reached out to the State Department. Obviously, on a holiday weekend, though, you wouldn't necessarily expect to hear back. And we'll wait to hear back from you also on the progress of your investigation.
Thank you so much. We are planning an independent investigation. We have $30,000 in his GoFundMe, and we're committed to getting justice for Jesse, even if we're not getting help from outside sources.
All right. We'll wait to hear back from you. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you so much.